we are developing students for the industry, career technical education, so that they become our replacements.
These young people have chosen this opportunity to get a jump start on their career.
They'll have a better idea about what they want to do and what they're good at by the time they leave high school.
There's some great opportunities for these students that are coming out of the career and technical programs from Henrico County.
Hello, and welcome to another edition of Henrico CTE Now. I am Rashawn Garnett, and with me I have
Mike Roberts,
and today we are on the campus of Varina High School, okay? It's not quite as good as Henrico High School because, I came from Henrico High School, but, Varina's pretty all right. Got to throw that out there, man. Rivalries, man.
Henrico,
rivalries.
Is the only place to go is Henrico? It'll be awful crowded.
It's not the only place to go. Varina High School, let me be clear, is a very, very good high school. So is Highland Springs High School. Highland Springs High School is a very, very good high school. But Henrico High School, yeah. All right, I'm going to get into that, okay? But we are on the campus of Varina High School here today, and we're talking to somebody very, very important and very, very, very special. But before we do that, I got to remind you guys to check us out on social media at Henrico CTE. That's Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. Also, check out our website, henricocte.com, to stay up to date with us. Mike, tell them where they can find the podcast or where else they can find the podcast.
Our host for our podcast is anchor.com, but you can also find us on Spotify, Apple, Google, all of the major podcast venues.
All of the major podcast venues. So we have you covered everywhere you go, however you listen, however you like to listen. We got you covered. All right. And now to your feature presentation to our very special guest at Varina High School, Miss Ferris. Can you introduce us first and last and tell us what classes that you teach?
I'm Miss Ferris, and I teach Nutritional Wellness, Intro to Culinary Arts at Varina High School.
All right. And what class are we interrupting at this moment?
I smell muffins burning.
Intro to Culinary Arts.
Intro to Culinary Arts.
Yes.
Okay. So I'm just kind of curious. Just take us through like an average day of, let's say, Intro to Culinary Arts, for example. Is Intro to Culinary Arts kind of like the precursor course everyone takes before they can go further? Or, just take us through an average day first and tell us kind of like what Intro to Culinary Arts is.
Yes. Well, I have... there's so many different things that you can make it. I base it off of my students and the area that we're in. A basic day in my class, at the beginning of the week, they have their layouts of everything that they need to do. And we have that week to finish it as a group. A lot of team building. It's a lot of teamwork in here. And we have events. We usually can carry on to 3 to 4 events a week. And that is before school, after school, during school, with different groups. So if there's a football game, we're feeding the entire football team. So we are prepping and cooking that day. And if there's a basketball game, same thing. So we usually are doing something for somebody on our campus. And we tie it back to our curriculum.
All right. That sounds good. And, that's what CTE is all about. We say here all the time, Mike, getting that real world experience, and certainly cooking for somebody and somebody else outside of yourself is certainly a good way to get some actual experience. You mentioned teamwork. So talk about the importance of building a bond with your students, and how do you kind of make those students not make, I guess, but how do you help those students get along with each other and work as a team? Because cooking, especially when you're cooking for a lot of people, is more than a team sport.
It is. It's very hard. At the beginning of the year, we hit the ground running. And the first thing is learning each other's name is a big part of it, and learning each other's weaknesses and strengths. They have a really understanding that I keep my classroom as a family. And that's when we're going over the rules of my classroom, that is part of the rules of the classroom. We are a family. We're going to fight and argue, but we're going to get over it because we got stuff to do. But with the team building, I think this year was the first time that I actually had a class that could not be a team. Mm-hmm. And first time experiencing it, and I tried so many different things. We did circle time. We did
Other team building exercises.
all these team building exercises outside of cooking, in the side of the kitchen, because they were not able to complete a task as one group, and it was really difficult until just last week they accomplished it. It took the entire school year.
But they did it, right? What is it saying? Better late than never, but
Yes.
never late's better. That was a quote from the hip hop philosopher, Drake. But so, how do you approach a difficult situation like that?
I cried.
That's healthy.
I cried and I was like, I don't know what's wrong with these kids. Like, it's not that difficult. They have to work with people throughout their entire life, people that they don't know, of different races, religions, and everything. And I'm trying to tell them that if you don't learn how to be a team player right now, you're going to have a hard time in college and in your next job. And it was really hard. Like, I had to talk to my coworkers, and I talked to, a lot of different people outside to try to get different advice to see what to do, because it was so many different personalities. They all had the ability to do everything in the class.
Right.
Their personalities clashed.
Uh-huh.
So it was me having to find a way to bring them together.
Right.
And ultimately, it didn't come together until I ended up getting hurt.
Wow. Oh man, how'd you get hurt, if you don't mind me asking?
I was breaking up a fight and got hurt.
Oh, physically hurt.
Yeah,
Physically.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yes. And I went out for a couple months.
Oh my gosh.
And they had to fend for themselves because there was a substitute here.
Mm-hmm.
But they had to do things and get things together. They still had to feed the football team. They still had to feed the basketball team. They still had to do all those things. And they had to complete it, because I was not here to do it for them. And the substitute had no idea
Right.
how to do it. So,
Is that the type of thing that, makes it worth being a teacher, when that thing you're trying to, that goal you have with those students, and being able to bring them together finally succeeds, even if it took the whole year?
Yes.
Right.
Yes. That's a part of it. Definitely a part of it. Definitely a big part of it. Seeing them grow and have that, just growing and having that spurt of intelligence coming, like, oh my gosh, we can do this as one.
And I want to talk about, every time I come in here to film, I've visited Ms. Ferris' class multiple times throughout the year. I think more so this year than any other year.
Yes.
It just seems like you just have such a tight bond with the kids in itself, right? So how do you personally go about creating that connection between teacher and student? You know what I mean? To where, like, an absence like you had was just so impactful that it forced them to join together. Because, a lot of kids might just say, well, the teacher's not here. We can goof off. We can do whatever it wants. It doesn't really affect us. But with you missing, they stepped up to the plate. And I think that says a lot about how much respect they have for you. So how are you able to cultivate that type of respect? and hopefully your answer could be a blueprint for some other people who might need a little bit of help in that area.
Well, with me, I'm not just a teacher Monday through Friday. I'm in my community 7 days a week. I go to their games. I go to their churches. I go to any event that they have that's not related to school. Like, I try to be a part of their life outside of what we do here, and let them know that no matter where you go, what you do, I'm going to be here to help you to make sure you get through it. And I come from a background that I can share my experience with them too. I was on my own at 16, so I put myself through college and I did what I had to do. So me having that experience, some of my kids that go through certain things, hey, it's time to man up or woman up. We got to get it done.
Right.
So I'm very raw with my students, and I keep it real with them. This is what we need to do. And however way we got to get there, we got to get there. And you got to be the one to do it. I can't do it for you.
Right. I think the kids can definitely feel, with the teacher's care, man.
Yeah. Well, plus it feels more real to them,
right?
Because you don't just have a teacher up there, just tell them, this is what you're going to do.
Uh-huh.
you can relate to them and you can tell them and saying, this is what I had to do. Mm-hmm. You know, this is my situation. You want to talk about your situation? How about my situation? I can talk to you on your level.
Right.
Yep.
Right. And that's a huge and key thing in building that bond. Absolutely right. Ms. Ferris. So I think Mike kind of hinted at it. But what are, and you can expand upon it, of course, but what are some of the more rewarding things about being a teacher? Like, what would you say will be some of the most rewarding things about being a teacher, about being in education?
I think for me, seeing my students, I have taught generations. And I can go into Varina area down in White Oak. Uh-huh. And I can see my past students telling me how they've graduated from college, or they have been working and now they're like the manager, the regional manager of a certain store or something. And they're the top dog because they've worked so hard. And I've had some that have had children and have told me, man, you know, the things you were telling me really were true.
Right.
Just them acknowledging that they remember the things that I've taught them, and just seeing them and them coming back and giving back to our community. A lot of our, I try to get some of them to come back and talk to our students and be a part of things that we do here at Varina, just so they can see that it does make a difference when you get older, that what your teachers are telling you is true. So that's a really rewarding for me to see them succeed. And even when they don't succeed, because I've had some that has not succeeded, them actually saying, I know what I could have done.
You know, there was a different path for me, and, you know, going back, if I could go back, I would change it. Mm-hmm. Speaking of the appearances that I've made to your class, one of those appearances was when you guys had Smoke Pit Grill come out here. And so talk a little bit about that event, what happened, and what do you hope the kids gained from that visit from Smoke Pit Grill?
Oh, it was just amazing. Just an amazing experience. Mac gave our students here at Varina, like, he got them out here to teach them how to cut competition ribs and how to season and how to smoke them, and also how to use the food truck. Like, we were able to get on there and see how it operates. And it was so many people that came with them. Even the police officer, I can't remember his name, but the police officer was very impactful for one of my boys that I've been struggling with all year. And he just made a whole difference in his all-around attitude. And now he's like, well, next year, can we do this? He's already planning for our class for next year. So I'm sitting here like, oh gosh, I need to go take a class on this so I can figure out what in the world I'm going to do, because he's super excited. So I've been practicing at home just so I can make sure I can get it done here with him, because certain things didn't click with him here that we did, but this smoke pit was like,
it sparked the interest.
A whole different kid, like all kind of questions, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm not the one.
But that had to be the intent, though. Like, yes. Is that what you wanted? Like when you and Mac kind of devised this plan?
I did. It was, and just something, just a different experience. Just to show them that they can learn from anybody. Like, you can pick up anything and any type of skill from anybody. Yeah. Like, you can learn if you just stop and look and listen.
Right.
You can gain so much from people. Like, and you don't know when you're going to use it, but you have it.
You have it, right. If you never use it, at least you have it, right?
And I tell them all the time, you always get a notch on your belt loop. You always need something behind your name. Mm-hmm. You can't just be a name out here in this world. You got to have something behind it.
Right, absolutely.
And it was them coming out here and showing them that, you know, was amazing. Gave me ideas for next year, like really with like the truck, because I didn't really hit a lot on the truck part, but it sparked interest in these kids, and I think I'm going to do some great lessons next year with that. So I'm super excited.
Well, I'm sorry, Mike. Go ahead and ask your question.
You can walk on top. I don't care.
No, I'm just going to ask a question about. I know Gordon, the pitmaster, I was talking to him. I got a chance to interview him, and he was saying that he wanted to start some sort of like a competition amongst the high school. So just kind of comment on that for me. How do you feel about the idea?
I'm on board with it. He was talking about trying to find out if Lowe's or some other people would be interested in donating smoke pits for each culinary class in Henrico County, and would come out to his restaurant. And we always like even grounds, and then culinary kids just go head to head.
I think that'd be cool, man.
And compete. Wow. So I was like, oh, that is great, because we used to compete with Cupcake Wars.
Yeah, I saw your trophy. The trophies hanging out in the kitchen over there. She got a couple of trophies hanging out in the kitchen.
So, and the kids were like, well, we were going to compete against something. So when he brung it up, I said, this would be great. So I'm going to hopefully work with him this summer on planning and getting something worked up for Henrico County for next year.
All right.
So
that's awesome.
I'm really excited about that.
Hey, I'm looking forward to it too.
What do you think about the growth in the past 5 to 10 years here in the Richmond area of the food truck industry that's been happening? I mean, there's no place on the weekends, you go everywhere. There's a food truck in front of this.
And let's talk
place
about
and that place.
We got the festivals and stuff. All those things starting to come up around this time where there's nothing but food trucks out there.
Exactly. And it's outside of Richmond. You drive through West Point on a Friday evening, and there's at least 6 or 8 of them over there next to the river. They're popping up everywhere, and that's great business opportunities. How do you see that as what it's bringing to the job market for these students that may be looking at something like this?
I think that with like all of the new housing development that's going on, and the kids seeing that they have an opportunity not just to work in a restaurant, that they can actually be outside, because some of our kids don't like to be cooped up on the inside of a building. We are Varina. We are outside most of the time. So I think the food truck industry has gotten really, really big on our side of town, because we have more families. We have more people going out, and we have we have a lot more things going on that they're hitting. That's the market. That's where the money is.
Oh, yeah.
Especially with the black businesses, and they go out there, and with our students, they realize how Mama J's is on the food truck.
Yeah.
Well, as far as how they get it out on a food truck. This is what we got to do. You got to prep some stuff and get some stuff on there, and you can do it. But when they actually saw the inside of a food truck, they were wowed. And they didn't realize that you can actually make food inside of the truck.
Oh, yeah.
So, I think some of them just thought that you just had to bring it on the truck and but them actually seeing the electricity and all that stuff that works with it, I think that some of them want to work. They want to work. They want to have that experience, that job experience, before they go into a fast food restaurant.
Right.
So that's the talk that I've been hearing since I've had Mr. Gordon over here at Varina. So I've been looking forward to talking to some people and getting them in some applications. So we've been working on that for the last 2 weeks.
That's good.
That's awesome.
That's what we want here.
Yeah. Oh,
yeah.
We want to get these kids out here
working on
working.
that for the last 2 weeks. Yep.
That's good, man. That's good. And exactly, that's exactly what we want to do, and that's exactly where we want to see these kids heading. And you working with culinary and family and consumer sciences, I'm sure you hear this reason for taking your class a lot. I like cooking. But is that the best reasoning? Or is that like the only, I don't know what I'm trying to think.
Is that enough? Is that
enough, right?
Is liking to cook enough? And is there a difference between a cook and a chef?
or are chefs cooks and are cooks chef and vice versa?
Anybody can be a chef. Anybody can be a cook. But in my book, I just see myself as a cook. In my book, because that's what I've been doing. For real, that's what I've been doing, is cooking. And I've been teaching them how to cook.
But if you want to do this as a career, you want to be a professional.
Yes.
Is just liking cooking for your family gonna be enough? Because you have what you see on television, and sometimes it can seem pretty rough. What you see, how much is that a show business, and how much is that for real?
Right.
Because my wife was in the restaurant industry for a long time,
Yeah.
and she was never the cook; she was the waitress, but she saw a lot of really crazy stuff.
Yeah, it can get. You really have to have more to it than just liking it. You really have to have a passion behind it. You have to have some type of creativity behind you, that's a big thing, because if you can't create something, then you can't really be a chef.
Well,
Right.
at the same time, you can create something that tastes really good, but then there's the whole presentation.
Yeah, it's got to look
Yeah.
good too, right?
It's to look good.
It's so fancy, and it's like I don't even want to eat it. It's so. Let me take a picture of it.
Yeah, take the picture of
And
it.
that's why we have the Instagram pages dedicated to food, because of how pretty some of these chefs or cooks
Yes.
come up with the presentations.
And that's part of the creative part. With my kids in Intro to Culinary, we've been working on displays. So the presentations of the food and the presentation of the whole entire display. When I get my new class next year, Intro to Culinary Arts 1, it'll be more of the plating of the food and
Right.
the food itself. So it's going to be interesting to see how this works out. I'm super excited about it, but you definitely have to have a passion and some type of creative mind for it. Just liking to cook. As a teenager into my class, they love to eat. It's not about they love to cook.
They heard they could eat here, so they were like,
They
I got
love
to
to
sign up
eat.
for this class.
Yes.
I got you.
So I love to eat, and then they look at me like, oh my God, this is like a real job in here. I had no idea this was serious. And so the good thing is that I usually get the kids that know me in my Intro to Culinary Arts classes.
Right.
They've already known me, and I've already probably taught their brother or their sister, so they already know what to expect. And my reputation just precedes me out here, and they already sign up because they want to go through it. They really want to go through it. They see us out here, and they see the kids and the way the kids post us on, because social media is huge. So
Yeah, it is.
the things that we do, they love showing everybody else what they're doing and what they have completed for the day. So other people are like, oh my God.
in a way, the kids promote the class for you.
Yes. I really don't have to do much of anything. The kids promote it for me, and
That's awesome.
they usually just come in, and I work them out, and it's great because they learn so much. They just learn so much.
On the reality, but still on the reality side of what it means to be a cook, is a lot of people just look at it as like you're just cooking all day. There's a lot more to it. You want to explain on that? What is a cook's job?
I don't cook all day. I'm not fitting to cook all day. I can tell you that right now. The chefs probably, they direct everybody else and tell them what to do. So you have different stations, and everyone has a certain job, and then it brings it all together. So as far as there will be a recipe from the chef, and then they will break up into the groups to get every inch of it done, a certain part, and then they bring it together to serve it. So with me, I do like the big parts, like the seasoning part and the telling them when to turn it over or when to move it or when to do this. More of make sure this is happening, make sure this is happening, make sure that's happening. No, that's not right. We got to start all the way over. Throw it in the trash.
Throw it in the trash and get another one.
Believe me, you don't even know how many noodles we have thrown in the trash. I couldn't even fix them. I'm
Noodles,
like, I don't even know.
that's like the first thing you learn to cook, right? Spaghetti and things like that.
Beginning of the year, let me tell you, noodles was not okay. It was a whole, oh my gosh. Noodles are very hard for teenagers. And I don't know why. I have no idea. But we work through it now. We can make some really good noodles. So you really are directing. You really are like the head boss, telling and making sure everything gets done properly. And if it's not, you tell them to do it over.
So you're like a coach, kitchen coach.
It's like a kitchen coach.
Kitchen coach.
But
There's like a kitchen coach.
There's even some jobs that occur even before the actual implementation. There's the planning and the creating the menus,
Right.
Oh, yeah.
and
Right.
and the individual items on the menu.
It'll take a week. It'll take about a week and a half for them to get into the kitchen for a lab. And that's going through all of the information, what we got to do. That is talking about if they have to the grocery shop, because they have to be broken up. The classes only get 20 people in the class.
Right.
So I end up having 5 to 6 groups sometimes. And each group got to come up with their own recipe Then they have to do the grocery list. And then they got to turn it in by a certain time. If you miss that, then you get a whole 0. So,
Wow.
because I go to the grocery store, I leave my house usually at 6:30 in the morning almost every day to get to the grocery store by 7.
Wow.
So, and if they miss my time,
Yeah.
Then they're in trouble. It's a wrap.
It's a wrap. Then you're going to go to the grocery store by yourself because I'm not finna do it.
Right.
But then it has to have something behind it. Depends on what we're doing. So we do they do their big diversity display from around the world. They pick a country, and as a group, they have to learn everything about that country, religion, culture, what type of farms, what kind of crops they grow, what kind of animals that they eat, and the trade and stuff like that. And then they have to look at their holidays and their celebrations, and they have to come up with a recipe from what they've learned. And it's usually 4 in a group. And then I get like 6 teachers to come down and
Taste test.
How
do those taste tests usually turn out?
I get good. They get really good reviews. Most of them. Some of them not too well.
Well, most, right?
Most of them. But it takes them a really long time to get to that point. So the planning part is really it's a lot, and so we have a lot of I teach a lot of planning beforehand, especially depending on what we're doing. But it all depends on, like, with our sports that we do.
Right.
We have to plan the entire menu for that sports team, and we need to make sure that it fits them,
Right.
and they get enough nutrition to go forward. So they're like, oh my God, I'm not a football player. I don't know what I'm supposed to do.
You're gonna learn today.
You're gonna learn today. So, the biggest part with basketball season, the basketball team wanted to make their own menu, macaroni and cheese. So, we had to find stuff to go with macaroni and cheese every game.
So I had mac and cheese every game. Is that like the official stamp of Varina basketball? Macaroni and cheese.
The state champs are macaroni and cheese eaters.
Macaroni and cheese eaters. Okay. So if you're listening out there, Henrico, you need to eat macaroni and cheese before every basketball game. You know what I mean?
But the kick is not Miss Ferris's macaroni and cheese.
Dang,
Henrico
right.
Henrico.
We got to find the Ferris. I don't think we can do that.
Yeah, Henrico's not a lock on that. Henrico's not locked on me right now.
We got to find the recipe, guys.
Yeah.
Quick. No, just kidding. All right, Ms. Ferris, running up against the clock here. We actually went 27 minutes. We're actually only supposed to go at max 20 minutes, but that's all right. That's all right.
Oh, it's
That's
more
all
fun
right.
when the longer it is.
Yeah, right. We were having
sorry.
a good conversation. It's not your fault. It's me. I'm looking at the clock like, we can stretch this. This won't last but 5 more minutes, but it lasted a little bit longer than intended. Okay, so I want to thank you for having us here in your classroom as we interrupt your intro to culinary class.
I know it better be done. My kitchen better be clean when I get over. That's what I do know.
Hey, I heard that. Thank you guys out there for listening to us here on another episode of Henrico CTE Now. Be sure to check us out on social media, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. I don't think I mentioned that in the intro. I knew I was missing something. And YouTube at Henrico CTE. Also HenricoCTE.com. Make sure you stay up to date with us. Mike, tell them where they can find the podcast.
You can find our podcast on Anchor.com, Spotify, Apple, Google, and many, many of the other podcast venues.
All right. No excuse for missing a
single episode.
A single one. And even if you miss one, you can go back and listen to the old ones. So you can catch up at any time.
Oh, and I've got an update on our international listeners.
What's that?
We have an Australian and somebody from Ireland.
Wow. Australia. And we have, what, Italy?
Yes.
The other,
yes.
I think that was like prior to the Masonry episode.
Oh, yeah.
Man, national.
We're international.
Henrico CTE.
Uh-oh.
International. I forgot
I'm just
the
waiting for the
part.
checks to start rolling in.
All right, guys. For Mike Roberts, for Miss Ferris, I'm Rashawn Garnett. Thank you guys so much for joining us on another edition of Henrico CTE Now. So long, everyone.